How often do you buy and consume products? Over the years, especially in today's society, our desire for products has greatly risen and the culture of consumerism has grown very rapidly. However, the impact on our environment has also hugely increased. CO2 emissions that come from our daily consumption activities constitute to about 42% of the United States' total emissions, and this poses very harmful effects on our environment over time. On the other hand, PLCBS or proactive low carbon consumption behaviors are great for creating better and sustainable consumption patterns at an individual and society level. In this paper called Determinants of Proactive Low Carbon Consumption Behaviors, Insights from Urban Residents of Eastern China, the research and statistical methods were performed to predict the driving factors of PLCBS at an individual and group level. For the null hypothesis, even though it's not stated in the paper, it basically represents that there are no differences between the variables in which we are studying. As for the alternate or research hypothesis, there are 7 hypotheses stated in the study, and this is because there are multiple independent variables. These 3 individual level factors positively affect PLCBS. These 2 group level characteristics positively affect PLCBS. And lastly, consumerism culture negatively affect PLCBS. The Likert scale was used to measure the factors and collect the participants' responses, 1 being strongly disagree and 5 being strongly agree. The reliability of the scales were tested using Cronbach's alpha. The Cronbach's alpha value for each construct was greater than 0.7, and it was above 0.7 for all constructs involved in the study. The higher the value of the Cronbach alpha, the more confidence we can have that this test is internally consistent and correlates well within itself. Using a software called SPSS 22.0, it indicated that the data is normally distributed and we can use a regression analysis. And we are using a regression analysis because it helps us predict a variable from other variables or the influence of one or more variables on another variable. We use the multiple regression equation because the study has 1 dependent variable and multiple independent variables. Our independent variables are normative internalization, learning capacity, symbol concern, expertise level, consumerism culture, and environmentalism culture. Our dependent variable, or our Y, is PLCBS, or proactive low carbon consumption behaviors. A represents coefficient of individual group level factors. I, subscript I, denotes the ith respondent, and control denotes 5 control variables, including age, gender, income, educational level, and family size. Control variables are constant and unchanged throughout the course of the investigation. Let's have a look at the regression results. So it's pretty hard to read, right? So let's split them up. These are our control variables, and these are our independent variables. The results we got for them are significant, but how do we know that? So the 3 stars represent a p-value of less than 1%, and a p-value of less than 1% means that any value that has less than 1% probability of being drawn from the distribution will be considered extreme enough that we will reject our null hypothesis and say that the alternative is likely. So this means that our values are significant and we can reject our null hypothesis. Now let's look at our coefficients. So we see positive numbers for these, which suggests that normative internalization, learning capacity, symbol concern, expertise level, and environmentalism culture are positively associated with PLCBS, which is consistent with our alternate hypothesis. And since learning capacity and normative internalization on PLCBS seem to have the highest coefficient than other factors, this means that for each 1 unit change in learning capacity, we expect on average a 0.271 additional change in PLCBS, other things held equal. For each 1 unit change in normative internalization, we expect on average a change in PLCBS of 0.260, other things held equal. However, we do see a negative number, which is for consumerism culture's coefficient, which is negative 0.125. the negative coefficient indicates that the culture of consumerism negatively influences PLCBS. So our alternate hypothesis for it is also supported. It means that as the independent variable increases, which is as consumerism consumption increases, the dependent variable, which is PLCBS, tends to decrease. So we can say that PLCBS, or proactive low carbon consumption behaviors, are positively influenced by individual group level factors such as normative internalization, symbol concern, learning capacity, expertise level, and environmentalism culture. And since NI and LC are the most positive and significant ones, we can say that for normative internalization, that the more degree into which we hold protecting our environment to our own codes of conduct, the more likely we are to perform PLCBS. And the more capacity and willingness we have to learn, the more we are likely to manage our biases and change our behaviors, and are more likely to adopt low carbon consumption behaviors. And since consumerism culture negatively affects PLCBS, then we need to shift our focus from consumerism culture to environmentalism culture. We can start at an individual and group level to create these changes, and progressively we can move on to societal and universal changes to better help our environment and protect it.